Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. And today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Philip Grandin. What drove the former pastor to end the life of his pregnant wife? Some individuals only feign kindness, friendliness, and responsiveness, but deep down, they lack love, compassion, or even pity for those closest to them. It's often hard, if at all possible, to explain why a person might decide on a crime so severe, leading to the act being attributed to poor genetics or inherent or acquired defects. But what could push a former clergyman and nurse to end the life of his own pregnant wife? The case of Philip Grandin in 2011 shocked all of Canada and received widespread international media attention. The former Baptist church pastor and qualified medical professional, who was working at a nursing home at the time, was accused of the ruthless crime against his wife, Philip Grandin, who was 20 weeks pregnant. The investigation of this complex case dragged on for over a decade, and the final judgment of the court left the deceased woman's relatives dissatisfied. Carissa and Philip Grandin, before they met Carissa Anna Grandin, née Darwin, was born on October 10, 1981, in Pasay City in the capital region of the Philippines, and was the eldest of two daughters in the simple family of Maria and Marvin Darwin. She was raised alongside her sister, Joanna. When she was 13, her parents, seeking a better life, took their daughters and immigrated to Canada. The family settled in Toronto, where the children went to school and the parents found work and joined a local religious community. All family members were congregants of the Baptist Church. Carissa was an excellent student at school and later enrolled at a university, choosing to study archaeology and geology while also working part-time at a hardware store. In 2006, Darwin graduated with honors from university, earning a master's degree, and began working at a local geological research institute. Friends and colleagues described her as kind, attentive, and very responsive, always ready to lend a helping hand. She was deeply religious and regularly attended church, where she eventually met her future husband. Philip Grandin was born on August 18, 1986 in Paris, but moved to Toronto, Canada, with his parents as a child. His parents were also religious and were congregants of the Baptist Church, raising their son in strict adherence and obedience. At school, young Philip was active and ambitious, but very sensitive and trusting. He excelled academically, consistently participated in various school project competitions and scientific practical conferences, but had practically no friends, as his peers considered him a nerd and dull. Grandin received a scholarship in his senior years and graduated from school as the top student in the Ontario district. He could have built a brilliant career in science, but his parents insisted that he attend a theological seminary. After graduating successfully, he became a pastor at one of the Baptist churches in Toronto, where he met Carissa. Religious spouses. The charming congregant was 5 years older than the young pastor, but the pair immediately felt a mutual affection. Their relationship began with friendly interactions, but gradually the young couple grew closer and fell in love. As devout individuals with strict and conservative views, they could not live together without being married. Therefore, Philip and Carissa married just a few months after meeting. The couple held a wedding that adhered to all religious traditions, attended not only by close friends and family, but also by fellow congregants of the Baptist Church. After their marriage, the spouses settled in Scarborough, an inviting area in the eastern part of Toronto, close to Lake Ontario. At first glance, the couple seemed perfectly matched. Both were young, intelligent, ambitious, and shared similar life perspectives and unshakable faith in God. They believed that spiritual closeness and sincere love were the main components of marital bliss. The first few years of their life together were peaceful and harmonious. The long-awaited miracle and a terrible secret. Let's start with the fact that Carissa, due to an illness in her youth that caused a serious inflammatory condition, had been unable to conceive for a long time. She chose not to disclose her condition, so only her family and husband knew about it. For several years, she unsuccessfully visited doctors, underwent examinations, took treatment courses, and agreed to experimental therapies, but to no avail. Doctors were at a loss and even suggested that she might never be able to become a mother. In 2011, after 4 years of marriage, she finally became pregnant. When the test results came back positive, she couldn't believe her luck and hurried to share the happy news with her husband. However, Philip received the news with restraint and even indifference. Carissa didn't pay much attention to this initially, believing her husband just needed time to adjust to the reality that they would soon be parents and their life would change. However, in August 2011, shortly after confirming her pregnancy, she discovered a secret her husband had been keeping for many months. As it turned out, the pastor had started an affair with one of the young congregants, Elaine Florentino, who was also a close friend of his wife. When Carissa heard rumors of the infidelity, she initially refused to believe them, but then decided to check Philip's laptop and found messages confirming his affair with his mistress. Furthermore, by checking his browsing history, she saw that her spouse regularly visited adult sites and preferred quite perverse videos. That same day, she confronted her husband, noting that she was willing to forgive him and her friend to preserve their family. However, she demanded that he immediately end things with Elaine and stop visiting depraved websites. Another condition was his agreement to undergo couples therapy. Philip accepted all conditions, promising to return to the righteous path to save their marriage. Carissa sought help from their mutual friend and pastor named Stephen, whom she trusted completely. He listened attentively to her and agreed to help them as a family therapist. However, during a personal conversation with Philip, he strongly recommended that he leave the church service, as his actions and behavior were unworthy of a clergyman. Grandin was infuriated by these words, but fearing public scandal, agreed to resign his pastoral duties. New job, old vices. Philip completed his training, becoming a qualified nurse, and soon received several attractive job offers. He chose a local nursing home, located about 20 minutes from his own home, which offered a respectable salary, and this option seemed suitable to him. It seemed that life was gradually improving, and both family therapy and the job change were beneficial for him. He tried to be an exemplary family man, assuring that he had stopped watching adult films, ended his affair, and was faithful to his wife alone. In reality, however, he continued to meet secretly with Elaine, but did so very cautiously, trying not to be seen by anyone. The couple even avoided hotels and motels, and their meetings took place in Philip's car, where they drove to secluded areas. Soon, Carissa suspected that her husband was still seeing his mistress, and secretly checked his phone, where she found messages with Florentino. During a family therapy session, she declared that she knew everything, detailing what she had found in his phone. Stephen was displeased with this turn of events, and Philip was seething with anger, although he tried to hide it. At home, he caused a scene, stating that such things could have been said to him personally, rather than in the presence of a third party, to which his wife responded that making the problem public was the only way to influence him in any way. Strange symptoms. About a week after Carissa admitted she knew about her husband's infidelity, she suddenly felt unwell. On October 14th, her condition deteriorated so much that she was forced to seek medical help. She was hospitalized with complaints of severe weakness, dizziness, drowsiness, and disorientation. She lost consciousness twice, her blood pressure dropped to dangerous levels, and doctors were seriously concerned for the life and health of the expectant mother and her baby. However, all these symptoms were quite strange, as Mrs. Grandin had previously had no such issues. Carissa confessed that she felt unwell in the morning after drinking a smoothie prepared by her husband, but at the time, she did not think much of it. However, in the evening, after drinking a herbal tea Philip made, she felt much worse. She asked whether her husband had added any medications to the drink, but he assured her that he had not. The patient's condition and her story raised many questions, and the doctor examining her decided to immediately perform a toxicological blood test. The results showed traces of a drug called lorazepam, which has sedative, sleep-inducing, anticonvulsive, and muscle-relaxant properties, and also significantly slows down the central nervous system. According to the tests, the woman had ingested a large dose of this drug, but she insisted she didn't even know what the medication looked like. Grandin was hospitalized for 24 hours to stabilize her condition, but strangely, her husband was not questioned in connection with the incident. The occurrence was dismissed as a bizarre accident. However, Carissa herself did not think so, and in a phone conversation with her sister, she confessed that she believed Philip might have been trying to poison her or eliminate their unborn child. Mysterious demise of a pregnant wife. On October 15th, Carissa was discharged from the hospital, but 2 days later, she tragically died in her own bathroom under bizarre circumstances. At around 10 in the evening on October 17th, a distraught Philip called emergency services, pleading for them to come quickly to aid his pregnant wife. According to Philip, he had gone for a jog, and upon returning, found his wife unconscious in a full bathtub, suspecting that she might have drowned. While waiting for the ambulance, the dispatcher instructed him on how to administer first aid and perform resuscitation. However, Philip claimed unfamiliarity with CPR and chest compressions, which was odd for someone with his medical training as a nurse. Moreover, he stated that he couldn't lift his wife out of the tub because she was too heavy and her body was wet and slippery. The dispatcher then advised him to first drain the bathtub, place a towel under her head, and then use a sheet under her arms to lift her out. Only splashing sounds were heard over the phone, and a few minutes later, Philip reported that he was unable to lift her. When the medical team arrived at the Grandin home, they were surprised to find that he hadn't even removed the bathtub plug to drain the water, and all this time, Carissa's head had remained submerged. Philip seemed to be in a state of shock, barely comprehending what was happening, merely pleading for them to save Carissa and repeating that they were about to have a baby. Unfortunately, it was too late to save the young woman, and she died before the doctors could assist her, along with her unborn child. At the time of her tragic death, Mrs. Grandin was 20 weeks pregnant. An autopsy revealed that the cause of death was drowning, as her lungs were filled with water. However, the toxicology report yielded an unexpected result. It turned out that Carissa's blood contained a high dose of lorazepam, the same medication detected in her system a few days earlier when she was hospitalized feeling unwell. Additionally, a small hematoma was found on the back of her head, incurred just before her death. The injury wasn't severe, and most likely, she had hit her head on the edge of the bathtub. The mistress at the wife's funeral. On the day of Carissa's demise, her husband Philip was taken to the station and questioned. Despite some oddities, the tragedy was chalked up to a freak accident, and Philip was released as there were no charges to press against him. The following day, Philip, along with Carissa's relatives, began organizing the funeral. When offered to purchase a double plot at the cemetery, he reacted sharply, stating he planned to remarry and start a new family in the future, so he did not intend to reserve a place next to Carissa. His behavior appeared very strange, given that he had just lost his pregnant wife and was already talking about remarrying. Moreover, he did not seem like a grieving widower, but rather seemed to be planning his life ahead, as if he was pleased about his newfound freedom. After all necessary examinations, Carissa's body was released to her family for a farewell ceremony held at the Baptist church she had attended. Dozens of people attended to honor the memory of Carissa, who had passed away prematurely. However, the ceremony was unexpectedly disrupted by the appearance of Elaine, causing anger and sincere indignation among those aware of her relationship with the widowed former pastor. Philip observed the proceedings from a distance and made no attempt to ease the situation. After the funeral, he secretly went to mourn at his mistress's home. Investigation and irrefutable evidence. Following his wife's death, Philip went back to living his usual life, not even attempting to feign grief. He was openly dating his mistress, and his behavior fueled numerous rumors and local disapproval. Over several months, Carissa's parents and sister repeatedly contacted the police, seeking to initiate further investigation into why a pregnant 29-year-old woman died under such strange circumstances. Law enforcement was inactive for a long time until the Darwin family decided to go public with the case and spoke to the press. Only under public pressure did a new investigation begin. In May 2012, Philip was arrested on suspicion of deliberately ending the life of his pregnant wife. He was accused of administering a large dose of lorazepam to her, and after she became incapacitated, placing her in a bathtub where she drowned. Allegedly, it was during this time she hit her head on the bathtub edge. All the evidence against Philip was circumstantial, and a few days later, he was released on bail pending the investigation. He had previously claimed that the incident was an accident, but later suggested that his wife might have voluntarily ended her life. No traces of lorazepam were found in the Grandin home, and the drug was prescription only, which neither spouse had obtained. The doctors who had cared for Carissa during her pregnancy confirmed they had not prescribed any potent medications, as they could harm the baby. Philip did have access to lorazepam at work, where he was in charge of administering it to some patients. But could he have stolen some of the drug to harm his own wife? The suspicions were plausible, but there was no direct evidence. During the investigation, Philip's personal laptop was seized, which revealed intriguing information. Shortly before Carissa was hospitalized with complaints of feeling unwell, her husband had searched online to find out what dose of lorazepam could be fatal, and as we remember, this drug was indeed found in her system. Furthermore, on the night his wife was in the hospital, Philip had used a website to call a woman to his home to provide intimate services for money. He also maintained daily communication with Elaine, exchanging messages and phone calls. Lastly, it was hard to believe that a strong adult man could not pull his petite wife out of the bathtub and did not even bother to remove the plug, leaving her body submerged in water headfirst. First, trial and sentence. The trial of Philip began only in February 2014, nearly 2.5 years after Carissa's death. The defendant was charged with first-degree murder, and Joanna Darwin insisted that her sister had suspected her husband of trying to poison her, as she had confided in a phone conversation the day before she died. The prosecution argued that Philip had premeditated his wife's murder, with the incident occurring a few days prior to the tragedy serving as a kind of rehearsal. He had been calculating the correct dosage of the drug, as evidenced by his internet searches, after which he intoxicated Carissa and drowned her while she was helpless in the bathtub. Philip, however, now insisted that his wife had ended her own life and that he was simply too late to save her. However, the deceased's relatives firmly denied the possibility of suicide, noting that Carissa was a deeply religious person who would never commit such a grave sin, especially harming her long-awaited child. Witness testimonies, autopsy, and toxicological reports, as well as the search history on the defendant's laptop, pointed to his guilt. Thus, in January 2015, Philip Grandin was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison without the possibility of parole. New trials, and a surprising decision. Immediately after the sentencing, the former pastor and his lawyer filed several appeals, challenging the court's decision. The defense argued that the evidence presented by the prosecution was circumstantial, and the Supreme Court ordered a new trial. Philip's defenders suggested that his marriage was undergoing a serious crisis. Indeed, Philip had been unfaithful, but infidelity is not a crime. According to the lawyers, upon learning of the affair, Carissa fell into a deep depression, exacerbated by her unstable emotional state during pregnancy, leading her to end her own life. Remarkably, the court decided to release the accused on bail, allowing him to await the new hearings in freedom. This decision outraged and offended Carissa's family, but all their complaints were dismissed. The process was resumed only in 2019. This time, Philip was charged with manslaughter and failure to render aid. It was alleged that he saw the state his wife was in, but still allowed her to take a bath. After finding her unconscious in the water, he did nothing to assist her. The defense insisted that Carissa had simply slipped, hit her head on the edge of the bathtub, and drowned, and her husband was not at home at that moment to save her. Philip was found guilty again, but this time of manslaughter. He was again released on bail pending the final verdict. The Darwin family was outraged, demanding a just punishment for the person responsible for their daughter's and sister's death. Carissa's mother even suffered a heart attack after learning that her former son-in-law had been released again. In January 2020, the defendant was found guilty of manslaughter, but the sentence remained unchanged at 15 years in prison. Following this, he filed another appeal, and his lawyer managed to secure his release on bail once more. The ongoing releases seemed to mock the grieving family. This time, the defense insisted that Philip could not have known that his wife had taken a potent substance and was in danger, and therefore did not prevent her from taking a bath. However, in May 2022, the Supreme Court unexpectedly rejected the submitted appeal, deemed the lawyer's arguments unconvincing, and upheld the sentence for Grandin, sending him to prison for 15 years. Overall, the legal proceedings against Carissa's perpetrator lasted more than 11 years, most of which he spent in freedom. Carissa's relatives never came to terms with the final verdict of manslaughter. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to my channel. There are many shocking stories ahead of you.